I'm Annie Hanauer, and I am working in the contemporary dance world for many, many years. I've been lucky to perform all over the world in the work of other people and my own work. I choreograph and make things, and I facilitate dancing in lots of different settings. I work quite a lot internationally, and I work quite a lot with my fellow disabled and CRIP community. I think more and more that my practice is about getting to know people and getting comfortable with not knowing. Because I think from the outside, people think the choreographer knows what to do all the time. And I don't think I've ever met anyone who makes things who knows what to do all the time. So particularly, I think because I work with usually groups of people who are very different from one another, different physicalities, different movement backgrounds, people who come from different countries and speak different languages, there's always a big part of the process that's about finding out just how we work together, which is really, really interesting. And it's not always easy and smooth. There's usually some challenges or like unknown stuff that we have to uncover and deal with together. But it's always really interesting, and I always learn a lot. And I just find it really fascinating how different people move their bodies, how dancing works for different people, what it accesses for them. So there's a real human thing. Like, I think the social reading of who we are in the world and what people read through our bodies is always in my mind also when I'm creating stuff. And the most important thing, probably the most important creative choice I think I make, is like choosing who I work with. And then getting used to, I'm saying get comfortable with not knowing, because there's always some kind of beautiful discovery that you have to make. So for me, working within this disability context, I guess, is about embracing difference and not pretending that we don't see it and not pretending that we're all the same. And that's really applicable to like every group of people. And I think from the outside, there's still a little bit this perspective of like, oh, that's really nice, that's like charitable of you. And I'm just like, not really, because I'm not here to be charitable. I'm like here to do stuff. And I'm working with artists I respect and who are really powerful and bring a really deep artistry to their work. I'm here to try and make good art, whatever that means. And I work with people who can make that with me. And I like working with people who are so different from one another and from me, because it brings new elements into movement. It brings new meaning into our art making. And like that's the thing that people kind of think like, ooh, about how do you like adapt to, how do you possibly work together? And it's like, that is part of the work. It's not all the work, but it's part of the work to figure that out. And then actually we end up making something really, really rich that I could have not imagined, because we had to go through that process together. And it's also just, it's bringing so many beautiful different perspectives into movement that we don't usually get. And that for me is what makes it very, very exciting. There's like an interest in sort of disrupting those assumptions, I guess, in me. And not necessarily with the content or like the artistic focus, but just in doing things the way we do. It's sort of disrupting assumptions around people and our bodies, which I think is what I hope goes out into the world and starts to challenge some of those things. For me, that's been a really essential learning from working in the disabled community, is that we have to shape our working process and our environment each time with the people we're working with. And I keep learning more about that from my disabled colleagues. And it's just been very, very nourishing and eye-opening for me to learn, what can we do differently? And I think if that expertise and perspective would sort of like spread into the sector a lot more, instead of seeing it as an alternative thing, I think actually everybody would be a lot happier. It feels like a hard environment right now for so many people in lots of different ways. But I think artists are really, really resourceful, and I get inspired by the more kind of grassroots solutions people keep proposing and finding on different scales. yeah, ways of sharing space, ways of being together, ways of keeping moving, because I think that generates energy and it generates hope to keep going. And I think there's a lot more awareness. Like, I moved to the UK 16 years ago, and there's a lot more awareness about the kinds of things that are present in the communities I work with around access and around inclusivity in many different levels. There's a really different level of awareness about that now, which is really great. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. We can go much further, but things have shifted. So it's important to remember that as we keep, trying to go further as well. I think I've been very lucky to meet people at good times, but I think it's really important to say to everyone who sees things from the outside that underneath there's like 50 times more work and like things that didn't happen that made the one thing on the outside that you see happening possible. And rejection is such a huge part of what we deal with as artists, and whether it's not getting an audition or writing a grant, spending a lot of unpaid time to try and get a project going and it doesn't work out. Like, I've had plenty of those rejections that at the time were very difficult. So yeah, I guess it's good to have your support structure around you. It's good to give yourself time to recover and know that it takes time to recover, because it can be very, very hard when you get knocked back like that. But to not let it lead to despair, that there are still things possible, and also that sometimes things don't come from the direction that's expected. And it sounds a little bit silly, but I do think that the more we're just out in the world doing things and meeting people, there's a resonance. People remember us, or they think of us for something, and sometimes a project comes your way, or a person that you want to work with. That can happen in a really also organic way sometimes. So yeah, to be ready for the good things as well as the bad. Yeah, keep the love alive. keep the joy of moving your body. I don't know, that's the thing that I really have to keep going back to now, especially because dancing has become my work. So then sometimes it feels like work, and actually to remember that it used to be something that's just I did because I loved it so much growing up, and I still love it. So then to just go back and move around just for the pleasure of it is very important for me, and it's something that refreshes me and keeps me going. And I think you can learn from everything all the time. So the things that were not great experiences are also good learning experiences, or things you didn't like as much are really good to learn from too. And I think for I don't know, maybe artists who are earlier in their profession or work life or career or whatever, you can say no to stuff. You can trust yourself, and just don't let anyone tell you you can't do it. Just do it. Try and do it. In this industry, we're all responsible. We all have to take responsibility, and we all have to trust each other and give as well as take power. And that we can work together in all kinds of ways maybe we haven't invented yet.